What's up, guys? For today, I've got something pretty damn special, which is an interview with Vishy Anand, which I was able to do a month ago. Quick backstory about that, how I even got to meet Vishy. Well, I met him before. I was commenting the FIDE Women's Grand Prix in the start of the year in May. But why was Vishy exactly in Vienna at the end of October? Let me tell you about it. So the Austrian Federation, the Austrian Chess Federation, organized a training camp for the younger generation of Austrian players. Myself actually being one of the oldest participants there. I think the second oldest. In total, it was a group of 5 players. For example, Dominik Horvath was there, who had just played in the Croatian League, Valentin Dragnev, and 2 of the other very promising talents of Austria participated. So a pretty small group in general, which was of course also nice for us, because if there are too many people there, then no one really gets to ask their questions to him. Overall, we really peppered him with questions, as Vishy put it, like in the interview, and it was an incredible experience overall. Of course, hearing about all of his different experiences from the World Championship matches and those things, but also, of course, the chess-related, the more chess-specific advices he was able to give. We even got to play training games against him, myself included. He crushed me in all of the games there. Well, crushed is maybe a bit of an exaggeration. I actually had my chances there. If you want me to present those games on my channel, or maybe present some of the other things which I found incredibly useful during that camp, let me know in the comment section down below. But I don't want to talk too much now, and hope you just enjoy the interview. I generally tried to ask some questions which hopefully he was not asked too many times before that interview, since he has given so many in his whole career. But there were at least a couple of them where he had to think for a little bit. So that gave me some hope that the questions could have been a little bit creative and something a little bit out of the box. And honestly, some of the things in the interview which he said were also incredibly enlightening to me and incredibly interesting. So enough talking, Felix. Now enjoy the interview with the 15th World Champion Vishy Anand. So thank you, Vishy, for taking the time to do this interview. It's great to have you here in Austria and to coach the younger generation here. How did all of this even get together?
So a month ago, I suddenly got a message from Michael. He said, I have a sudden development. Peter's playing the World Cup. I'd like the camp to go ahead as planned, and we were excited about it. Would you be willing to come? My initial reaction was hesitation. I hadn't really planned for this, and I thought I have a kind of heavy schedule. On the other hand, I've always enjoyed being in Austria, and I know that Michael's a good host, so I sort of said, okay, let me think about it. Give me 2 days. And I reverted to him and told him, yes, okay, so I can come. It'll be a short. He said it's only 4 days, so just a short camp. That's how it got going.
Well, we're all happy that you're here. How would you generally describe the atmosphere of the players here and generally the motivation?
I like the working attitude. I think the creative level is high, which means that the players themselves ask questions, explore new ideas, and all that. And I can say that, you guys have been peppering me with questions. So that also shows a lot in your mind. I mean, I don't think necessarily you have a lot of clarity in these things. I mean, even my answers would be something like yes, but under the circumstances, and something like this and thing. But I think it reflects the real world uncertainty that we play in. So I enjoyed it. I think the youngsters' attitude is nice. They like the game, and they really want to learn. And I think that's the main thing.
Is there actually anything distinctive about the Austrian chess? Is there any stylistic things which you can see this is the Austrian style?
Actually, I had this theory many years back that when I was young, there used to be something called an English style. Mm-hmm. And this was based on the English weekend circuit and what you needed for that. And there was an American style, which is based on their open tournaments and their price structure. So, you needed to take big risks and win the last round and win with black and, all that kind of stuff. And then you had countries with round-robin tournaments, and then they had respectable openings, and so the Asian style used to be just self-taught, improvised, constantly getting into lousy positions, and then happily playing after that and somehow bouncing on. So, but I always felt that computers kill this national style. So what happens is the effect of an island, that all the players in a country bunch together, they associate with each other, they exchange ideas with each other, and so that becomes kind of unique, like a signature. But once most moves are suggested by the computer, I think there isn't a national style really. And then it gets more individualistic, just like all the diversity you have within a country, the player styles will reflect that as well. So I don't believe there are national styles anymore.
Austria has produced several grandmasters in the recent years. What do you think is the next step for a country like Austria, a comparable small country like Austria, to make a real mark internationally?
I think the first step is just to get active and move things. I mean, everyone has their circumstances and so on. But any community which is active and constantly having projects, having tournaments, having things, the first thing you need is that momentum. Some federations can be much less active and then nothing much is happening. I mean, maybe one player is very gifted and they break out, but otherwise you don't have this momentum. But I think right now, I also see that I come to Austria very often because they're organizing events, and because of my role in FIDE, I'm able to come for that. But and also I've played the Club Cup, for instance.
In Meyerhofen, yeah.
Yeah, Meyerhofen. But subsequently, I've come for many other events as well, and that's a good sign. The players are eager, and then Austria doesn't have any obvious disadvantages, because really you should compare the continent, because you guys have a chance to work with anyone in Europe, and so and even if one country is organizing lots of tournaments, everybody can participate. So in that sense, you guys have that opportunity to catch up, and now it's a question of waiting for someone to make that breakthrough.
And if you were advising the Austrian Chess Federation, how would you nurture this long-term growth? Like, are there any specific steps a federation would need to take?
Partially, I think I would say that you can organize these tournaments, get more activity, but also try to project chess in the media, things like that. All these things have a effect on the players as well, and they get more motivated and excited. In the end, these kinds of training camps and expertise, you can go a long time without achieving anything or looking like you achieve anything. So, but there's a lot of progress happening, but it doesn't break through. And then one day it happens. And you might need to support players more directly. Some players may need a year or two of sponsorship, or perhaps some trainers and things like that. But I think these are very solvable.
And since, now you're also have a big role in FIDE, but also with the Indian Chess Federation, huge chess federations, what should smaller federations like Austria imitate from them or learn from them? And what should we not try to imitate and maybe learn from some of the mistakes which the bigger federations are making?
I think continuous improvement. I mean, every federation makes mistakes, but every federation also does things right. Continuous improvement. You look around, you learn. So there isn't like a specific thing, but Austria can't compete with giant countries and things like that. That's clear. But in your own way, you have a lot of strengths that you can play to. And if you compare Olympic sports disciplines and so on, you can see that smaller countries carve out nice niches. They focus on a few events. Set a goal. What are the things you're going to do going forward, and how do you tick them? So more tournaments. We can support youngsters who cross a certain threshold to improve, to challenge themselves in these ways, and we'll continuously work on keeping the sport in the national spotlight to the extent possible. And you do what's in your control. I think that's all you can really plan for.
If you could go back to age 16 with today's knowledge, how would you train differently?
That is such a different scenario that I don't know what to say. I think maybe the big thing would be to not restrict myself as much. I mean, I used to restrict myself to a very narrow part of the game and only explore when I got into trouble, and then I had to improvise a lot. I think if I had this kind of knowledge or tools, then of course the main thing is to explore everything, what you like, what you don't like, explore the whole variety of chess. And I guess that's the main thing I envy in today's world.
And if we turn around the question, I don't know if there is anything like that, but the current Vishy, is there anything that the current Vishy could learn from the Vishy that was 16 years old?
I really wish I could get back a lot of the spontaneity. I mean, at some point I started to work very hard to become, to compete for the world title and to move up. And I think I structured my habits better. I started to focus and all. But always when you do that, you lose some of the chaos and the improvisation. And I think there's always a part of you that wants to, that grows up and then thinks suddenly, well, I wish I hadn't grown up so much.
What's one question about chess you still don't know the answer to, even after all these years?
How many moves ahead do you think? I think we struggle with it. Probably we've all heard this question and it's very difficult to give an answer. But it would be nice to know some sort of number. And I don't have one.
It would be nice to have that ready for the interviews.
Yeah, but even just to know myself, I mean, if one day we can look at our games and realize that we calculate on average 4.5 moves ahead, well, it would be nice to know that.
Yeah. What was the best piece of advice you have ever received, chess related or non-chess related?
My mother told me when I was basically starting out in the game, when I was 6 or 7 years old. She said, after when you play, you come back and write down the game. I mean, those days nothing was recorded, right? So you write down the game, but also write down what you thought and what happened and what you could improve. So, brief notes. I mean, I think it was general advice, but I found it useful for 2 reasons. One is that there are details that you can't recollect much later. So you have to recollect them fast. And the second reason I think this was fantastic advice was when you write down right after the game what was going on through your head, it's more honest. You have not yet had a chance to invent excuses in your head. And so you, at least for a brief interval right after the game, you actually remember what went wrong. But already the next morning, you've invented a story that you saw more than you saw, and your mistakes sound more logical. Everything sounds more polished and cleaned up. Right after the game, you admit to yourself, maybe to no one else, but you admit to yourself, this is exactly, how careless I was or what I missed and thing. I think this habit was useful. I would recommend it to many people.
Especially
to keep
nowadays with
a diary
engines,
or notes. In fact, this is nowadays. It turns out this is the only secret information we have that no one else possesses. Exactly how our brain worked through something and learning from that, all the good and the bad. I think is.
Thank you, Vishy. One final question: do you have any chess person from Austria that stands out to you? Maybe a player from the past or from the present?
Obviously, there's Steinitz. That's clear. So, first world champion, and I think. Right now, to some degree, it is you. Yeah, you're the top player. But Valentin and Dominic also, I found it very interesting to work with. Honestly, everyone was contributing a lot. It was a fun session. I also learned a lot.